Well, that was an awesome session that just went on. I enjoyed it very much, and I think we're starting to see, even as the day goes on, how some of the themes that different participants are mentioning are starting to repeat themselves with similar dilemmas. This next session is focusing on some of our supervisors' experiences. And we have three panelists here who are going to each spend a little bit of time chatting, really from their own perspectives. With each person maybe has a little bit of a different emphasis on what they would like to speak about. The three folks who we're going to be hearing from are Eric, and is it KV or Cavi? I was sort of...
No, it's KV. You got
it. Okay, that was my bet, but I wasn't quite positive. So Eric has been in the field for really quite some time, and he did many, many years working in functional family therapy. Then he spent 5 years or so working generally with adults, and then most recently has taken on a leadership role within MRSS in the Butler Behavioral Health Services realm. And so we welcome him. And then we have Brittany Reed, who is a licensed professional, clinical counselor with a supervisory designation in Ohio. And she has also been in the field for quite some time. And she currently serves in all sorts of roles. She currently serves, among many other things that she does, as the director of the youth MRSS program at Coleman. And predominantly, as far as I understand it, your program is sort of throughout the Stark County area. Is that correct? Okay. And then we also have Maria Doble, and she serves as the crisis manager for the Family Resource Center in Northwest Ohio. And in her role, she supervises staff of the MRSS services teams for the Hancock County. So welcome to each of you, and we'll go in order in just a second. Some of the things that we're hoping to get out of this particular workshop are trying to get some sort of tricks and tips because each person has figured things out, a little bit differently, but about how to help to monitor the safety and risk issues in MRSS. Looking a little bit at the day-to-day operations that supervisors are trying to carry out, and it's very challenging. And also how supervisors and staff can help to monitor kids throughout their MRSS involvement. So from the sort of the minute that phone call's coming in, through the various things that we do to try to help them through the time of discharge, which can vary for each person. And so we'll go in the order that I presented them. So, and everybody will say what's important to them. And so Eric, if you could lead us off, that would be terrific.
Sure, thank you, Sarah. The area that I wanted to focus on primarily was on managing the team, managing the staff. I've been in management roles in this field for about 10 years, and there's some unique challenges and interesting aspects, not just challenges, to managing an MRSS team that I wanted to make sure I spent some time on today. So I think one of the most important things overall is keeping your benchmarks in mind. So as a manager, you're going to be responsible for lots of different things, and you're going to have your attention pulled in lots of different directions throughout the day, let alone throughout the week or the month. And it's important to stay grounded and find some way to keep yourself grounded in the certain benchmarks that are important to your program. And I'm sure that's different for every program, but so I won't go into detail on those benchmarks, but there's going to be that classic struggle between what is urgent and what is important, because entering data is never going to be urgent, except for when it is, because it's late, but it's always going to be important. So that just as an example, but with respect to the team, one of the tricks to MRSS is learning how to allow yourself to be moved between kind of an administrative role and a clinical role, because you're going to need to be devoting yourself to administrative tasks kind of in a planful way but you need to allow yourself to be interrupted and be able to put your clinical cap on when your staff calls and they're on a run and they need help with something. So that's sometimes tricky for some of us, or it has been for me. One of the other really important things about staff is we want for them to be able to respond to these very difficult situations, and we want them to be at their best, or as close to that as we can get on a consistent basis. So we always have to be mindful of the staff morale, their burnout, their secondary trauma, compassion fatigue. We certainly don't want them responding to an urgent crisis with a very numb and cold disposition, dispassionate. We want them to be able to be present and empathetic and have that be able to be expressed. So along with that, I've learned that in this program specifically, there's an increased risk of staff themselves, as Mike was talking earlier about, like not using the front part of their brain all the time, sometimes as caregivers. Our staff can start to move into that limbic state as well, as they're in a crisis. If there's a lot of yelling or physical aggression towards objects, let's say, or whatever else is going on, it can start to subtly have an effect on the clinician. So sometimes when they call for assistance, they'll call the supervisor, they'll call me to help them with how to handle a situation. I'll have to recognize that and have some skills myself to move them to de-escalate the staff in a way, even though I've never had staff get very escalated or even moderately escalated in an encounter, but just enough that it takes their frontal lobe kind of edge out of the picture a little bit. So sometimes that can be important as a supervisor. When it comes to the stabilization services, there's a few. So a lot of what I've talked about up to this point is the run itself, but the stabilization services, there's some tricks to this as well that I've learned. So over and over and over, I find myself using the phrase, let's make sure we stay in our lane. There's a certain mission that we're able to accomplish, a certain set of goals that are going to be relevant to an MRSS stabilization service that are different than what you might see in a classic outpatient setting. And a lot of our therapists, especially, have years of training. Some of them also have experience in the treatment field. And that's where our brains will naturally want to go, is trying to get a comprehensive understanding of what's going on with the client and with the family, and then come up with goals to help address all of that. It's still okay for us to do that, but we have to recognize there's going to be so much of that we're going to want to make referrals for, that are not going to be part of what we're going to be able to address in 4 to 6 weeks. So we got to make sure we're addressing those things that are really critical and key to helping this family not find themselves in another crisis in the next 4 to 6 weeks, as we can move them to something that can help build their skills over a longer period of time. One of the other things that's interesting about managing an MRSS team is managing peers. So I haven't had much opportunity to do that in my previous leadership roles, and all of my experience as a supervisor has been largely with clinical staff, and there's a different skill set with managing a non-clinical individual, the peer. I'm using that term a little delicately, I guess. I've been in a lot of trainings, national trainings on the role of a parent peer support. And what I've learned is that there's a lot of different perspectives, and I don't know, maybe somebody else knows, that it's been very, very well defined just yet what their role is within this continuum of care. So some places are utilizing peers a lot like a case manager, helping to implement some of the therapeutic skill building that we want to see with a kiddo or with a family. Some places are using peers more just as a present support, utilizing their own lived experience to come alongside the parents and just be present with them and not really have any expectations within that relationship. Just support, just, what can I do for you? And I've found myself leaning more towards the latter in that, because we have clinicians that can fill the clinical role. We have, on my team, we have skill builders that can fill that clinical support role. So I've really liked having peers be able to not be able to come in without any of those expectations and just be a support for the parents. Managing that is difficult. How do you have a clinical supervision with somebody who's not doing clinical things in the room? So there's been some tricks to that. I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but being mindful of that has been important. And then the last thing I want to say about managing the team is the concept of balanced alliances. So I've learned that some people on my team will come in with a heavy bias that causes them to align more strongly with either the kiddo or the parent, and it takes some work to ensure that we are keeping those alliances as balanced as possible. We're not going to be able to be very helpful if we're not really trying to be aligned with every a key member of that family system, in my opinion. So that, I'm sorry, Sarah, I don't know what my time is, but that's really all I wanted to say about that. I'm sure there's a lot more to cover.
Well, Eric, you did a terrific job, and you were 1 minute shy of it. You did great. You're perfect. And, as you were speaking, I'm sort of writing down notes. It's just that we're always continuously learning from each other. I just love the concept you just mentioned of the balanced alliances, and that's absolutely just great. I'm taking that back. And the unique role of peers, and what are we really doing to make sure we're defining their roles and providing them the supervision that they deserve and need, for sure. So thank you so much. And Brittany, thank you for coming today to speak.
Yes. So 2 really core responsibilities that I try to focus on every day and in general is, what can I do to support my team every day? And what can I do to ensure that our team is functioning at the top of our game so that we can best support our families and our community? So one of the biggest things is making sure that I'm supporting my staff. They all need something different. And so I try to meet them kind of in the language that they need to feel supported and appreciated. I check in with them every day, see how they're doing, if there's anything that's overwhelming them, and anything that I can kind of take off their plate so that they can focus on the families that they're working with. It's been really important to be available for consultation, especially during really complex or unique mobile situations. And then also being available to debrief after those mobiles and kind of talk through. We get some really stressful and traumatic situations that we have to go out on and support kiddos and families, and being there for my staff to come and just kind of debrief and have that emotional fallout so that they can get off their chest and, move on. So really having that open door policy has been very instrumental, focusing on making sure that they're safe. So we implemented an in and out board. So if they're gone for a long period of time, I will call and check in on them and make sure that they're doing okay. So I know where my team is at all times of the day, in case there's any concern about them, and just making sure that, they're okay. I try really hard to monitor their workload and what the day is bringing for them, and not being afraid to just jump in and help when things get busy. I think my team has trouble asking for help. And so I know they're not going to say, hey, I need help. I try to kind of keep an eye on how they're doing and just kind of jump in and see what I can do, if it's making one phone call for them or taking a mobile for them, and supporting them through that. And I think it's important to show that you're not just the supervisor of this team, but you're a member of this team. So we are not above doing the work with them and with our families. And then obviously a big hot ticket item is self-care. and making sure that our staff are taking care of themselves, that they have resources to do so, encouraging them, to take time off and take a break and enjoy a vacation so that they can come back refreshed. We're currently working on a self-care room, and we have staff on this little subcommittee. So they are putting their buy-in and their ideas into creating this room so that they can have an area to debrief and kind of recollect, de-stress a little bit, and then be on the top of their game. And then the importance of regular individual supervision and team meetings. I know for us, there's one staff in particular that every time we have supervision scheduled, he gets called out on a mobile. Having that flexibility and making sure like we're both free, so let's check in now. But it's really important, especially with, monitoring the families that we're working with ongoing, getting regular updates, open door policy. They'll come in and say, hey, this is kind of where I've hit a roadblock, or here's a barrier that we're running into, and making sure that they have that support through that. The other really big responsibility is focusing on team cohesion and team care. This has been really instrumental with increasing communication amongst team members, them support each other, building that trust that when a counselor passes the ball off to the case manager, family peer support specialist, they know that that family is going to be taken care of. Or if part of their safety plan is that we call and check in on another shift, they know that they're giving it to, the counselor on our second shift and that they're going to be taken care of. And so that really builds that teamwork to better serve our families and community. We have a team mission statement. And so we really focus on reminding ourselves of that common goal and mission that we have of keeping our Stark County kiddos and families safe and improving their lives and being there when and where they need it. Ensuring that we have transparency and open communication so they will not be surprised by anything. So with OhioMHAS and every update, I make sure that they know kind of what's coming and the different things for us to kind of consider that we might have to tweak some of the practices that we're doing or processes and things like that. So they are never kept in the dark about anything that's going on. It's been really instrumental to kind of seek their input and get their buy-in on any changes that we might have to make. If they have any input on the types of qualities to look for in hiring a new staff or different things that they think might be a good question to ask them or scenario, being able to identify and work together on what are some solutions to issues that we might be coming across. And so like we've come across several situations that it's a very special population. And so we work together on identifying, okay, what's a type of training, who in the community can we have come talk at one of our team meetings to give us extra resources and support. So we did that with human trafficking. We saw some kiddos that it was suspected that they were involved with human trafficking. We developed a critical incident stress management team to be able to intervene right after a stressful and critical traumatic incident in our community. So they have those tools and knowledge to be able to work with those special populations. We had a situation that one of our counselors was very overwhelmed with the amount of kiddos that she was seeing on her shift. And one of the other counselors came to me and said, I want to help her. And so we figured out that they would flip shifts every other week to give her a little bit of a break and to make sure that it's a shared workload. And she was super grateful for that. And that made all the difference. So really making sure that their voice and opinion matters and is extremely valuable. My team is housed in very close proximity of each other and me. And so that really has been helpful with fostering an environment of teamwork that they can just pick each other's brains throughout the day, support each other through difficult situations, be able to collaborate and get updates on families that they're working with. And really making sure that they know we don't operate in silos. They get to know each other as a person, not just a coworker, which has been very helpful. They consult with each other to, navigate obstacles and barriers, learning from each other. They're able to recognize when, someone is starting to get a little burnout and be like, hey, I'll take this mobile for you so you have a break. Or, hey, maybe you should consider taking a day off, and really help encourage, because it's a lot easier for them to take that feedback when it's coming from a peer than me hounding them to take a time off. And so I think it's been awesome to see how big of a difference just having that team cohesion takes. And we had a really stressful week not too long ago, and one of the counselors brought in his cotton candy machine and was just making cotton candy with each other. And it really kind of built morale, and it was a nice little break, and doing something nice. So we try to do things that, build our team functioning, and, making sure that the team is taking care of themselves. So we recently did an escape room puzzle. So we worked together. It was very difficult. And so we took time to work on little pieces here and there, and they really worked together on completing that. We regularly do team lunches, which is something that they wanted to do, which was really awesome to see, really having that mentorship and support of their coworkers, especially new hires, kind of taking them under their wing, and more seasoned workers being able to be, a valuable resource for each other. And so we also try to celebrate successes, no matter how small they are, with working with our families, and making sure that we're learning from any challenges and unique situations that might come up. And then lastly, making sure, do they have the tools that they need to do their job? So we acknowledge that, some families, it might be more helpful if we send them a text message. They might respond to that versus us calling. So we worked on getting, a company cell phone so that they have access to that. We noticed that some staff were struggling with, there's all of this that is going on with this family, and how do we kind of bring it down into, this is what we're focusing on, our up to 6 weeks of short-term work. And so we kind of work together to create like an assessment tool to help them kind of target the questions that they're asking families, and the different resources and strengths that they have, and the things that we can do to try to wrap more services and supports and resources around them. And so also addressing, are there any pain points that add to their unnecessary stress? So is there certain paperwork things that maybe we can cut down on? Are there certain protocols and follow-up support that we can implement, and things like that? So those are really my main focuses with supervising my team.
Thank you, Brittany. I can already hear people, or I don't know if it's been in there or not already, but this assessment tool that you've developed to sort of, I'm sure other folks who are participating today would love that. Yes. I don't know if maybe that can be sent to Rick or somebody for dissemination, or Laura for dissemination, if you're open to that. Before moving on to Maria, I was noticing your team mission statement, and then I was trying to get that super quick. Do you mind repeating that? Because it sounded really great.
Yeah, so it's to improve the lives and safety of Stark County youth and families by helping them where and when they need it.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much. Okay, so thank you. And then Maria.
And of course, I would have to go last.
No, that's all right. I'm so sorry. Before you, we will have some opportunity for discussion. So if there's questions or wonderings or something like that, just go ahead and please put them in the chat. And if not, we'll just have a little bit of conversation at the end. Thanks. Sorry, Maria.
That's okay. I was just going to say a lot of my talking points are probably going to be a little bit repetitive, which is fine, because Eric and Brittany did a wonderful job, explaining how they operate in their role. So I'm just going to share my notes, because I kind of took it objective by objective and just listed down some notes, and I can elaborate where it's helpful. But I think that conversation at the end will definitely be beneficial for other providers. First of all, I just want to shout out my team too. They're on here, and one of them, my peer support, Stephanie, it's her very first day today. So that's exciting. She's gonna mostly connect with our parents, our parent peer support. As a mom, she's walked the life with one of her children, and I'm just very excited for what she's going to bring to the team. And Bryce is my paraprofessional, and then I have Jamie as my clinician, and of course Prussia. None of this could really be possible without her, so we really appreciate her input. And of course, all my team, everybody has their own strengths that they bring to our team. So in terms of number one, where it says participants will learn supervisory strategies for monitoring youth and family risk and safety issues. Again, I was just jotting down some notes. Agency-wide, we have implemented the CSSRS screener into our notes. I know Rick and I have talked about that in a training previously, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it, but it has been very helpful in terms of, you know, making sure that we're asking those questions at every visit with our youth and with our adults. So it's something that I have been pushing for and advocating for literally a year, and it's finally happened. We were using a 40-some question version to monitor and assess, you know, suicidality and all of that, and it was not working for us. So this has been very instrumental in helping our team kind of know what's next. You know, what are the action steps that we need to take? So I just had written down that we administer that screener at every visit, and then we always develop a safety plan by the second visit, and we review and edit that as needed. A lot of times that's going to help to tell us whether or not we need to adjust the acuity of our youth and how many times we're, you know, seeing them each week. In terms of when it said family risk and safety issues, I don't know if this would be helpful to anybody, but a lot of times I hear my team talking about how they guide the communication and the conversation between the youth and the parent, guardian, caregiver, what have you, to establish those clear expectations for those behaviors. A lot of times parents, you know, they don't have the skills necessary to be able to set those boundaries and those expectations. So I think being able to have a plan and encouraging the parent to know, you know, what their child is doing, who they're going to be with, when will they be home, et cetera, that kind of helps to reduce the overall risk and safety concerns. We actually had a youth that was at the loft the other week, which Prussia talked a lot about the loft and how our youth go there and kind of connect with others. And he had voiced some suicidal ideation and then just kind of dipped out. Nobody knew where he went. And so his mom, we got a hold of his mom immediately, and she was able to kind of like ping his phone. They had an app kind of connected to his phone to find out where he was. So just things like that. I mean, talking to parents and sharing those resources or those suggestions with them to kind of minimize the risk. And then basically empowering the parents to kind of, when the trust is broken, how can you follow through with those appropriate consequences for the youth? Because a lot of our families and our parents struggle there. Number two, participants will learn the core responsibilities of MRSS supervisors in managing the day-to-day operations of the program. Again, these are very repetitive, I feel like. I love the analogy of the air traffic controller. I feel that's my life on the daily. However, I very much empower and delegate. I know a lot of you on here already know me and kind of know what I do, but I failed to give Sarah a explanation of like everything that I do, like Eric and Brittany did. So I actually oversee adult crisis services for FRC as well in Hancock County. I am the only provider for adult crisis services, and I have been the only one here since March of 2020. So in April, this was kind of thrown onto my plate, and I was like, all right, I can roll with this. I've worked in treatment foster care before, you know, this is right up my alley. And I'm so glad that it was thrown onto my plate, because I am so proud of how far our program has come. I don't know if anybody caught in the chat box, Prussia gave some data or some statistics after her presentation. Let's just say that in Q1 of this past year, we had one youth that we worked with. In Q1, one youth, and then Q4, there were some 38 referrals, I think. So again, it's been awesome to see our program grow. Obviously, that's come with various challenges, though. I started with one staff member and now have, like I said, 3 staff underneath me. So it's just great to see the improvements. I very much cannot be breathing down people's necks and be constantly, you know, babysitting, and I don't need to be. I very much have total faith in my staff, and what's nice about it is they come to me and they know that they can always come to me if and when they need something, and, you know, consult. I always say to people, even in the adult building, if you're hesitating on anything or you feel like you need to just process and hear yourself kind of think and talk, then my door is always open. I think because I take on the adult side by myself, it's a little bit, I think that, you know, there may be like, oh, I don't want to bother you, we know you're so busy. But again, I feel like, you know, I always try to be there for my staff, and they know that. I've made it a point this last week to start kind of trying to set up, I think like Brittany said, some one-on-one time. We have weekly supervision every week for a couple hours. It's set for an hour and a half, but we usually spend anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours together, and it's great. But everybody has their own needs, and everybody kind of needs their own time and their own space with me to share things at times. So I've made it a point to be able to get in my schedule some one-on-one weekly check-ins with all of my staff, because as it's been said various times, self-care is huge to the success of our program. We cannot help youth and families, and to the best of our ability, if we're not helping ourselves and bringing our best self to work every day. So I just kind of wanted to lay that out there under number 2. And I guess, like, in terms of when we do get calls and we are trying to figure out, you know, maybe there's multiple requests at once or what have you, and we try to triage appropriately. So I could maybe step in and try to, you know, help triage. I've even responded to calls, like Brittany said. I've stepped in and I've made home visits myself, and when I had to. I kind of, with the help of the youth clinical supervisor, kind of came up with a system. If it's important, send me an email. If it's urgent, send me a text. If it's emergent, send phone call immediately. We've been trying to kind of get that out there agency-wide so that, you know, we know what type of support is expected right then and there. That's not to say, again, that my door is always open, and they can, I'm pretty sure they know by now, they can message or call me at any time, but that's kind of how we try to play by, just because, again, I do a lot of things on the adult side too. So another huge part of my responsibilities, I feel like core responsibilities of supervising, is maintaining relationships with our community partners, our stakeholders, referral sources, state, regional directors, and various people on this phone call. And of course, you know, Presha and Jennifer at the board. I think that, you know, without all of them, this would not obviously be possible. We wouldn't be doing, you know, the good work that we're doing in our community. I highlighted that scheduling can be very stressful because you can never plan for a crisis. And obviously we've talked about that a lot today. We don't operate 24/7 here, but we sort of do, in the sense of, one of my responsibilities on the adult side is to have an after hours crisis staff. So our business hours are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. However, my staff bend over backwards to kind of meet the demands of the calls and what our families need. So even if somebody is already engaged with them and they need a visit at 7 o'clock at night, they would do it. And we would, you know, we've just run into an issue where we have to flex time a lot. But I try to advocate as best as I can to, you know, make that happen, because it's very difficult during the school year to be able to see these kids, that, especially the ones that are in extracurricular activities, and you don't want to take them away from those, because obviously that's very important to their overall mental well-being as well. So scheduling, I think it's going to continue to be a little bit of, you know, a barrier at times, but I think part of that is hiring the team of people that I've hired that have the characteristics of being, flexible, team players, communicative. So like if anytime they go out on, we always refer to it as dispatch and a run, which I think it's kind of funny, but we just say over and out, 10-4, things like that to kind of like, just keep the sense of humor going. But they always let me know where they're going. So I feel like that's really important for their safety as well. We kind of assess the situation or the location or the home before they get there, before they go out, so we know what to expect. But those are the characteristics I need and in my team. I think it's very important as well to kind of have that sense of be able to be autonomous when you need to be able to make decisions and follow through on what you tell people you're going to do. The last objectives, I already kind of like touched on this a little bit, but I said we hold weekly staffings to review our caseload so that we can kind of monitor the progression through that 4 to 6 weeks. And to me, it's huge to adhere to the 4 to 6 weeks for us, because we were not doing a good job of that when I first took this program over. And I was struggling to also do a good job of that and enforce it, because these kids need so much and these families need so much at times. But I feel like we have finally come to the, we're okay with not being able to fulfill everything right then and there in the 4 to 6 weeks, which brings me to the next point of, I feel our team totally excels at being able to do kind of like facilitate engagement and connecting and coordination for like ongoing outpatient services with FRC or whatever agency is going to be in their best interest for their needs. I think it's kind of just like a given expectation at this point that, Jamie, Bryce, or Stephanie, whoever, is educating the family on the ongoing outpatient services that they could take advantage of here as well. They just, because you don't need to be an open client to FRC to receive MRSS. So before, I feel like when I first kind of took over, it wasn't being not stressed. I don't know the right word for it. We weren't putting it out there like we are now. I feel like most of the youth that we work with, and actually the additional family members, are all getting engaged in services, whether it be the siblings or, the parents, caregivers, guardians. I feel like we're doing a really good job of being able to connect all of those individuals, whether it be on the adult or the youth side. We have 2 separate campuses, so that requires a lot of communication and a lot of work and warm handoffs to other team members here at FRC. So I am very proud of, that aspect of services that we provide on kind of like on the discharge side of things. I think I'm going to be repetitive when I say this, but in our team meetings, we always obviously identify the barriers and the challenges and try to come up with a proactive plan to problem solve and advocate for the unmet needs of the youth and the family. As well as, again, I have noted, as Brittany said, celebrate growth, even if it's minimal, offer praise for continued motivation through the process. So for instance, we had a youth that, has called into the crisis hotline several times on his own in the past couple months. And to me, like, no, I don't want him to feel suicidal, but that's awesome that you're using one of your coping skills that we've taught you. So just things like that. I mean, that to me is a celebration. Even though you're feeling suicidal, I'm going to celebrate that you just took a step in the right direction. I think the only other thing I had written down was I started jotting some notes when Eric and Brittany were talking, just continual growth and improvement on our end. I have my team, I don't know if they know this yet, but they are registered to attend a CISM training, so critical incident stress management. The next one, hopefully that's going to be in January. I obviously know the facilitator up in this region very well, and we have, unfortunately and sadly had a lot of traumatic incidences occur up here in Hancock County recently. Most recent being the death of a 4-year-old boy at the preschool over here across the street. So we definitely still try to engage and offer that support, but I want it to be like, we are the mobile crisis response team. It should be my team going in there rather than, you know, somebody else that's trained in CISM, which is great, but I want that to be somewhere where we really grow as an agency and as a team to get in there and be able to provide those services and then connect to the 4 to 6 weeks and ongoing services. I think that's all I had today, Sarah.
Well, thank you very much. I was trying to think of something right at the end there, but you know, I love that the ownership piece in the community of that. It really does make sense, perhaps, for MRSS to be that first responder in many instances after these horrible tragedies, in part, or I mean, for many reasons, but we literally can see that youth tonight, the next day, over the weekend. Maybe it's the older brother that starts to have a hard time, or the kid's breaking down in school. I mean, as an example, so maybe we're doing some follow-up care there. It's terrific that you're doing that, and it's a great, I think, purpose for MRSS. And you have so many other purpose. Sorry.
That's okay. I just should have noted they had this little boy had a couple older siblings that could have definitely benefited from the service. So that's kind of where my mind was at.
Yeah, and I mean, as sad as it is that, I mean, there's so many things we get called in for, but the depths of whether it's the youth or parents, just back here in Connecticut, we just had a situation where a really little kid found his parent had died. I mean, that he was the finder. So, and a very, very young child, just so tragic. I did want to open this up. Thank you for so much. And I did want to open this up. I don't know that I saw any comments in the chat or questions in the chat, other than folks are interested in the toolkits that were mentioned, I think, by Prescia. So hopefully, I think that a link was sent, is that right, to be able to get them from the wraparound site? Did I see that? I'm hoping I saw that, but if not, maybe we can make sure that those are disseminated to folks. All right, so some questions for the panelists. Let's see, what is one thing you wish you had known at the beginning of your work with MRSS that you kind of now know that maybe you'd like to impart on folks who are just getting started up?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is how much focus MRSS gets on that initial crisis run or that crisis call. And some of what I've heard about MRSS and what I've experienced is that it can also be very well utilized in a more like crisis prevention-y sort of way. So yeah. It's great to have messaging out there. And I like what Mike said earlier too. This was so affirming to me that you know, they were calling when it was a crisis, and they were so worried about when it was a crisis, eventually learned, you know, we don't have to wait necessarily, we can just call. We've been working with schools in our area, especially to start to function in that way too. Don't wait for it to get to a certain point. Call us when you see those red flags first popping up. But I think it's important to get that messaging out there right away when you're implementing MRSS, because people will start to get an idea of what it is, you know, pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, we can sort of say the big behaviors like self-harming behaviors or aggression or that type of thing, but it's how to show the challenges that families and schools are facing in words that make sense to them. So it could be as simple as, it's not simple, but using words like worried about your youth who's getting bullied, or, you know, maybe sibling conflict or something like that. It sounds kind of low end, but those are the things that do blow up into, you know, higher end situations. So the messaging on that would be, you know, key for sure. Okay, did Maria or Brittany have any other sort of like you wish you had known it and maybe you'd like to share it?
I honestly was just going to kind of ditto a little bit, segue into, I mean, when I first came on board, MRSS, as Prescia said, was already around for, I think we were going into like year 3. And I just figured everybody at the agency already kind of had a good grasp or understanding, what this was. And in all actuality, that should be where my marketing and where my education started. Once we were able to provide that framework for them, for the clinicians, and again, like Eric said, almost like just being proactive. Like this is what the program is all about. Yes, it should be a family-defined crisis, but you can still give them the information and the contact number. It doesn't need to be that they're calling right now, but at least they have it. Like on the inside, when we started doing that, our referrals just started to grow. And I think parents felt more comfortable calling because obviously it was coming from their clinician or somebody that they'd, been attached to for however long. So they knew they would get taken care of. I think it's very hard. I couldn't imagine as a parent, as Liz or Mike, and I very much appreciate them sharing their experiences, but it has to be so hard to call into the crisis hotline and then have to wait sometimes for somebody to come out there. So I think just, I'm glad that now we've kind of opened that door a bit more so that parents feel a little bit more comfortable. And I don't know if I feel like working with our CIT and our law enforcement here in the community, I forgot to mention that, but we've kind of created like a partnership with the PD here in Findlay so that if they have youth that we want to deter from going to the hospital, and a lot of times it's already youth that we're already working with, whether they be in the 4 to 6 weeks or they already be in an outpatient setting. We work with them too to kind of like refer but reroute, if that makes sense.
Maria, I think you had also mentioned that you work, like in your other part of your presentation, with you and your agency, but also all other provider agencies, because wherever makes sense for the family to get their services would be best for them. And then I could see the opportunity to really do outreach with those clinicians because, like you were saying, the clinicians may have, the most credibility to the families to speak about MRSS.
Right. And for example, just kind of like as a warm handoff, we have a youth that really could benefit from DBT services, and we don't have a clinician here right now that specializes in DBT. So Jamie kind of, had a personal connection to a great DBT therapist here in town at a Renewed Mind. And so we kind of facilitated, and it's not to say that the youth went. I honestly am not sure, but it's there if they need it. And like, I know I just talked to a clinician earlier, actually a jail-based therapist who had made a referral to a program up at CRC because we just weren't, it was a kiddo that we had tried connecting with the 4 to 6, and they engaged some, but they just needed something else for right now. So we really try to, I don't know, anytime I see somebody on here that, I've seen a couple times at a meeting or whatnot, I always try to get people's contacts and, establish and maintain those connections just in the event that I might need something down the road, or vice versa. It gets helpful.
Thank you. And Brittany, did you have any things you wish you had known in the beginning that maybe you'd like to share about?
Yeah. So similar to both of them, I kind of inherited my team when our local agency that was providing this service went under. And so we took over the crisis services for Stark County. And they did a really good job at marketing the service to police and schools. And what we were running into was, families, we were having a really difficult time with them engaging with us after the mobile. And so we really focused on how do we get information to the families so that they're the ones calling us. And so we were able to kind of tweak our language and give, instead of saying a behavioral health crisis, give specific examples, kind of like what you were saying, to help them recognize, okay, this is what we can call for, and that can be helpful. And when we saw a flip in our referral sources go to families being the primary referral source, we were noticing that it was way easier to engage with these families because they have buy-in. They are asking for help. They want us to be involved instead of it being kind of forced on them in a crisis from outside situations. So I think focusing on getting the word out to families so that they know, and then also recognizing that every mobile is going to be different. There will never ever be two that are the same, with different complexities and different obstacles. And so really staying grounded in what our role is, what we're here to do, and what resources and services do we have to stabilize the situation, provide that crisis intervention, and then do that warm handoff to the treatment team.
Thank you. Now, Wilma asked a question that Maria might have answered already, but Wilma was wondering, what type of materials are you using to market MRSS? And then Maria responded, check out the Project Reverb website, because it really is pretty terrific. Are you, what are you using to market MRSS? And especially then you had that switch to parents calling more. That was great.
So for us, we are very fortunate with our Stark County Mental Health Board, who's been instrumental in helping us build partnerships and access funding in order to be able to get marketing materials in the hands of families. So right before COVID hit, we worked really hard with our marketing team, Stark Mars marketing team, and the Canton Repository to create a mobile response publication. So we put together information, kind of what to call for, what that looks like, what they can expect, giving a real life scenario of what we were involved with and the positive outcomes that we were able to make.
That's great.
And so we have those that we make sure that we get in the hands of families. We've done, we created a mobile response postcard that also had a magnet attached to it.
Wow.
So that went to every single residence in Stark County.
Wow.
Recently, we had our mobile response information, like a sticker form that was stuck on top of local pizza boxes to get them into the homes as well. So those are some of the different things that we've done to get it into the households of our Stark County kiddos and families.
That's very cool. And I have to say, I feel a little bit bad for the post delivering folks when you had a magnet to every single resident. Those magnets are heavy, So that's terrific. There are some of the things you mentioned. Let's see. So there were lots of suggestions that were put by you guys and also other participants about ways to both market the program and things that have been helpful to put together for families. And hopefully, because it's I'm sure hard for everybody to take notes on what's there. Hopefully those will be compiled, and then I'm hoping there'll be a way to have them sent out to all participants before the end of the conference, which would be terrific. Let me ask, we just have a few more minutes, and I don't think I missed any questions from the chat. So maybe another question might be, okay, so here you've been doing it for just a little while now. What still stymies you, or what do you wish, like, if I could just figure this piece out, it would really be helpful for my program? And that also might translate to, what else do you think that supervisors need help with to be successful in running their programs? But we can just stick to the first part if you can. What's still like, it's really challenging to figure this piece out. Maybe they got it all down.
Well, I'm debating between two things. So maybe I'll just do both of them, but both very quickly. So the way our team has structured shifts is we have our daytime team that's full-time, and they all are the daytime hours, and then we have contractors on our after hours shifts. And so getting the anywhere near the same kind of buy-in with an after hours team, it really, I mean, some of them really are, and they just have that, and that's their nature. And it's difficult as a supervisor, I've learned, to foster that with after hours contractors who are taking maybe 1 or 2 shifts a month. So there's that piece. The other one is, so my team serves a 4-county area, and they really have like 4 different cultures.
Mhm.
And so we're actively reviewing data on a regular basis on engagement rates, what types of, who the referral sources are for the different counties, and trying to more optimize that. I really liked what Brittany was saying earlier. She had some great suggestions, and I saw Maria put some stuff in chat that I'm going to check out. But yeah, getting the different buy-in from different cultures, if you will, different counties. Yeah.
So the one size does not fit all,
No.
which is great.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to sort of figure out. Thank you. Any for Brittany or Maria, sort of what still stymies you, or maybe it would be helpful to know more about?
I think for me, it's just staffing.
It's all about
Shortage in our field. And so as we continue to grow and get busier with less and less applicants to be able to build our team, I think that's been a big stress point with making sure that we're able to take care of our community and making sure that our staff are not overworked and overwhelmed.
Thank you. And Maria, did you have anything you'd like to chime in?
Well, I just realized in my ramblings earlier that I forgot to finish my one thought when I said we're not 24/7 yet, but one of my responsibilities on the adult side is to oversee the on-call staff. So they are 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. And again, it's just scheduling and staffing. That's the only thing that really still kind of like causes some stress in a way, because I really would like to see it fully be 24/7, but in a sense we are, because I have the crisis hotline who we're contracted with. They are fully aware and do great at educating youth and families on our MRSS program. If they were to receive a call after 6 p.m., which it's extremely rare, but in the cases that they do, they reach out to me or the on-call provider immediately, and we schedule something. We get a hold of the family either that night to schedule something the very next day, or my providers will call and schedule them the very next day. So yeah, I just was going to kind of share that.
Well, staffing, scheduling. It's a huge challenge. Now let's see. So Tamara is showing off the work of Danielle, both of whom are phenomenal people, Tamara and Danielle, and the whole team there. What does she put? They're putting together self-care packages for mobile crisis staff, like bottled water, treats, Starbucks certificates, really well received by them. I'm sure they are. Well, listen, we're at time. I thank all of our participants, and I know I learned a lot, and that's having been in the field for quite some time. I'm just sort of writing down a bunch of notes, and I'm sure all of your colleagues did as well. And thank you so much. I think we may have a break. Is that right, Laura?
Yes. Yeah, we are moving into a 15-minute break. So be back at 3 o'clock for our final session of the day. Thank you all so much.